We're out here. This is the field where the magic happens.
Benning Bites with Damon Benning. Benning Bites with Damon Benning.
Another spectacularly spirited show on Hurrdat Sports Radio with my main man, Ravi Lula. And I know it gets intense, but I love it because it's, at least for me and hopefully for you folks out there, it's extremely thought-provoking. You know, a lot of baseball talk, obviously, with Nebraska getting ready to take on Florida and as they're down there in the Stillwater Regional, and just a lot of interesting discussions. It started with, kind of just a general, it's a seemingly innocuous comment about bullpens and why capping college baseball is so difficult, right? We went through all the seedings with the regionals and value and how Florida was a slight fave today, taking on Nebraska, and that morphed into, conference respect, the Big Ten versus the SEC. That spawned into local talent and where folks should go to play baseball. And I encourage you to go back and listen. There were tons of opinions, a lot of feedback, and it turned out to dominate the show. We didn't even get into the fact that Nebraska's playing in Iowa at 6:30 on Black Friday, and Paul Bunyan's axe apparently got moved for a multitude of reasons, which we will cover on Monday's show, which will be highly, highly entertaining. But I do think it's important. I think sometimes we look back at Nebraska as a baseball program, and I don't think we get inside the numbers in terms of their postseason success, right? The number of times they're playing in the postseason, 66% of the time since they've been in the conference, playing in a regional. And sometimes we think, well, what they should do. And the thing about it that we don't acknowledge is I think baseball is the most difficult of the true skilled team sports. It's a game in which you have to manage failure. It's a long season. If you do something a third of the time, you're seen as pretty proficient at your craft. And I think, Nebraska, despite how it's looked at times in the totality of what they've been able to accomplish, we should probably look at it in a little bit more of a favorable light, especially if you go back and listen to some of the conversations we were having about Nebraska's in-state talent and where kids are choosing to go. Because if that's the case, and kids are in fact opting to go to other schools, whether you're Cole Eaton or Cale Fountain or Tyson Lewis or Max Anderson originally, versus guys like Darren Ruff or Chad Myers or Jake Meyer or Alex Gordon or Dunsing, guys like that, Kate Povich, that stay home. Like, at what point does winning and having the opportunity to win become enough for quality local talent to want to be a part of their universities, even though the exposure and the tantalizing, the aura of playing in the SEC in front of, 7,000 every night, even if you're on the road. So I use that number and it's low. I get it. Arkansas is 15K every night or whatever. But on the road, you're going to get what you get at Haymarket and then some, because the other venues in the conference aren't like that. And so my question to Ravi, which I think is worth a very healthy discussion, because he made some valid points about why kids would choose to go elsewhere, but it was buoyed by the fact he felt like Nebraska high school baseball had outgrown its university. And that was what got pushback from me, because I wanted to say to myself, well, how many of those kids would it take to come to Nebraska if they started winning at a respectable level, even more so than the baseline that I started this Benning Bites with their postseason success? Is it winning a super? Is it making another run at a CWS? Because my point was, in 01 and 02, those kids would be coming to Nebraska. And it was because they were winning. And the SEC was still the SEC. They had the Lyle Muta. They had all the great players relative to the rest of the country. So it was a very interesting perspective. And I guess what I do hope is that sooner rather than later, hopefully it's this year. Can Nebraska make a run in Stillwater? Oh, I get it. Okie State's the prohibitive favorite. I think they're 2-1 fave to win the regional, and getting to the Supers is even more difficult. But I would make the case that of the college collegiate championships, outside of wrestling, I think college baseball is the most difficult to win a championship. You have to win a ton of postseason games. You have to do it in a very short amount of time. And it can be overwhelming. So depth is so critical in situations like this. But I don't ever want to underestimate the degree of difficulty it takes to excel and play at the collegiate level and be proficient at it. You're right. And one of the discussion points that we were having this morning, which I thought was so interesting, was, do enough guys, and you never want to say this out loud or speak it into existence, but for every Chad Myers or Jake Meyer or Darren Ruff or Alex Gordon, do you have to have enough Max Andersons that go away and come back and have success that will be a good enough deal for players to go to Nebraska originally? Or do we have to go through going to an LSU or going to a Tennessee or going to an Arkansas where it doesn't pan out the way you want it to, and then you come back to the university where you start to say, we probably never should have left to begin with? I don't know. But I do think it's a fascinating discussion as the sport within this state continues to grow. It's a very deep and talented sport. Probably only a few rivals. I think softball is played at an elite level here at the high school level. Volleyball is on par for per capita, produces some really, really good volleyball players that have success on the national level. And could baseball be that self-sustaining sport? As the showcases increase and the amount of high school camps increase, so does the level. And it is probably the singular sport where just doesn't leave you a lot of time year-round to do anything else. And I think we're starting to see that as folks become very, very, very skilled in the sport of baseball. Appreciate you being a part of what we do. Grab us on Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Facebook. I did TuneIn. I'm officially growing up. ESPN 5.
Nice job, Damon.
Well, that's my man, Ravi. See, he said it this morning on the show, and I remembered it. And I know I got to get that guy out of my head, but he's in the old medulla oblongata about 22 hours of the day. I need a vacation, but that's my dude. Make sure you give him a follow. Tune in on Monday. We'll be back with more good stuff and hopefully a couple of dubs in Stillwater to talk about. Got the fingers crossed. And the thing I want to encourage you, go look at that Nebraska baseball Twitter account and go listen to that voiceover about fight from my radio partner, one Mr. Greg Sharp. If anybody epitomizes fight that represents that program, it's G Sharp, and that video is sensational. That's another episode of Benning Bites.